Hello and welcome to the Independent Dealer Podcast brought to you by Buckeye Dealership Consulting. We have another great installment of our How I Built This series.
Yeah, it's awesome. Donald Sullivan from Sullivan's Auto Trading, I think, in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Great guy. A lot of great insight on a company that's been here for 3 decades, right, Jeff?
Yeah, and he goes over some really cool stuff, guys. He's going to talk about his Recon assembly line. It blew my mind. It absolutely blew my brain. I have never thought about Recon or detailing in this the way he does it. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, and hang on to the end, because at the very end he gives us the 2 greatest decisions he's made in the car business, and it's a teaser, Jeff. They're really awesome, so stick around.
I'm going to give you a little hint. One of them does have to do with one of our sponsors, or could Primalend, right? Great sponsor of the podcast, along with Buckeye. But if you're looking for money and you want to take some of Donald's advice here that he gives you at the end of the podcast, Primalend is a great place to get started. They're good guys to call. So without any further chit chat, here's the episode.
You are listening to the Independent Dealer Podcast with hosts Luke Godwin and Jeff Watson.
Thanks for having me. By the way, my name's Donald Sullivan. Virginia native. Our primary dealership is in Fredericksburg, Virginia. We also have another dealership in Norfolk, Virginia. We employ about 75 people. We have a bunch of different segments to our business, that not only decrease our time to market, but also create other revenue opportunities for us, throughout the year. We have a repair facility, repair and service, along with a parts department. We have a 21-man assembly line, Recon shop. They do a ton of car detailing. They crank out about 45 complete details a day. A day. Yeah. And that's full details. That's not what some people call them. If you're from the South, normally, you know what I'm talking about. But
Yep.
We buff the car twice and wax it once. We're cleaning the engines. We're painting fender wells. We're doing it right. So we also have an auto body and paint division, and we have a trucking division. We vertically integrated into trucking just to, again, decrease our time to market, and that's grown. We have about, we have 10 car haulers, and we have a fleet of about 10 trucks. Do they do well? It depends on gas prices. So, yeah, it's a lot of investment in that. But when things are good, it's good. When things are bad, it's bad. So
I tried to get into that a few years ago and was talked out of it. That's funny.
Yeah, I can we can do a podcast just on that. I have a lot to say about trucking.
That's wild, Donald. That's like quite the operation you've got going on. And so what I want to do is let's rewind to the beginning. I want to know the origins. Like, how did you get into it? How did you get started? And then let's work our way back to the present day.
Yeah, because Donald, I think you said y'all been in business 33 years. Is that right?
Yeah. So my father started the company in 1990. And we were primarily a wholesale remarketing company. This is the only thing that I've ever done. I've never had another job. I've never had the opportunity to work in another industry. From the time I was a young adolescent, even into a teenage years, if I wanted to spend time with my dad, I did it on bid lots and auctions. And, he was present at athletic games, but other than that, I didn't really see him, so my family worked really, really hard, but they operated in the wholesale remarketing space. And when I got out of college, and before, during, and after college, I stayed in the car business. I worked and I did things to continue to develop myself, primarily buying cars. That's what I did. But when I got out of college, I came and slowly took over operating the dealership. That didn't happen right out of college, but within 3 years, I was operating the whole dealership, and immediately opened up retail. We never had retail. We never sold a retail car for almost 15 years. We didn't do retail. We sold about 150 cars a week wholesale.
Wow.
So we did volume wholesale and we operate. But, in '07, when margins got compressed and the economy kind of took a dump, we were forced to look in other ways to really bridge that gap. And retail was, in my opinion, an opportunity to do that. I've always wanted to do it anyway, so growing through that was, of course, difficult, but in that time, I went back. I got my master's degree, in business. Also, I did the CMD program through NIADA, and I'm always continually trying to develop and just polish myself. Not just intellectually, but in the business atmosphere as well. So, and our company staff since then has doubled. Our footprint has doubled. Our inventory. Back then we had about 500 grand in inventory. I've got about 8-9 million in inventory right now.
Yeah, that's quite the difference.
Yeah.
So when you took over, Donald, you were saying when you you were doing a ton of wholesale, the company was doing a ton of wholesale. And then when you started dabbling in retail, what would you say? I mean, were you doing 10, 20 a month, 30 a month, or did you jump instantly up to kind of switching a lot of those wholesale deals over to retail?
That was it. We saw an opportunity to start selling for much larger marlin. And I think our first month, man, we did 20 some units.
Okay.
And we were like, wait a minute, there's something here, And so it wasn't easy though, because when we first started to get into retail, back in '07, it was a very, very difficult time,
Yeah.
and so it was trial by fire, of course, and we had a lot of failures and a lot of things that happened that really slowed us down. But I knew that was the future. I knew that we weren't going to be able to support our overhead, our staff, and have sustainable future if we just did wholesale. Because back then you used to be able to go to dealerships and buy all their trades. You used to be able to make connections with folks and have relationships where you would constantly get cars. And right then, I don't know if you guys remember, they didn't have V-Auto back then. They had like AAX. Do y'all remember that name?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, but it was the first inception of technology where you can see where other people are pricing their cars. You can actually see that stuff. And then NADA came out with a digital book, and MMR came out. That's when MMR came out too, if y'all remember that.
I do remember that.
And dealers were starting to understand on the new car side what their stuff was worth, and we didn't like that.
No.
So it was becoming more difficult to buy these cars with a paper book, and explain to them, hey, this is what it's worth, rough to average trade, man, and then it would do a shot at the auction because you had something. But those times were over with. And it was an interesting time. It was perfect for us though, because it really, really pushed us and forced us to get into retail. So but go ahead.
Donald, what did your dad do before 1990?
He had another business that he partnered with somebody who was called Sullivan Auto Brokers.
Okay.
And he just wanted to end the partnership and start his own thing. But he's been in the car business his whole life. His first job was a gas station attendant, at a service center. And then he started selling cars somewhere locally. But shortly after that, he was selling cars wholesale in his late 20s. I mean, he didn't wait long before he started getting into it on his own.
Yeah, I mean, our companies have been in existence almost the same amount of time, and it's funny the evolution. We used to do a ton of wholesaling as well, but what we noticed is, like you're talking about, the margins just continually decreased.
Yeah.
And we cut it out because we thought it was just it was taking up too much of our time. It's monopolizing our time when we could be focusing on buy here, pay here, and making that next jump. And y'all focused on retail. 07 though, to me, seemed like it was still a pretty good time for wholesaling, and a less better time for retailing.
Mm-hmm.
I know you said that y'all sold about 25 cars, but you didn't have, I'm sure you didn't have any establishment with lenders, and lenders were just running scared at that point. how did that transition, I guess, on that side, how did it work out?
It was interesting. I mean, our ACV was pretty low, it was only about maybe 8-12 grand. So we were still in reach for most people to write checks. And but we also, because of we had 15 tax returns under our belt at that point. So we were able to go out and get a couple lenders pretty quick.
Okay.
Able to get, some subprime banks are easy to get, right? But we were able to actually grab some prime banks, and Wells Fargo actually signed us immediately.
Wow.
And they weren't Wells Fargo Auto back then; they were Wells Fargo Dealer Services, and that's when they really bought well. And so Chase Bank, I don't know if y'all remember them. They got out of the auto lending, but they were really our middle of the road paper. And we got signed pretty quick with a lot of banks because of the amount of time we've been in business.
What did you feel, Donald? What did you feel was your biggest, like, a learning curve, or what was the biggest wake up call as you transitioned from wholesaling, which I imagine you were probably wholesaling to the dealers in your community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're switching to where you're now their competitor and you're selling things retail to their customers. Were there any lessons learned there, or what do you feel was kind of the biggest wake up call?
The wake up call was just the bridge, the gap, the gap in knowledge of compliance, and just how to structure a deal and put together a deal jacket. I mean, with a wholesale deal, you get one piece of paper.
Yeah.
And with a retail deal jacket, I mean, it was unbelievable. But I learned very quickly. I learned very, very quickly, and it didn't take long for me to understand how to do it all. And I really had nobody to teach me, So, but if you want to know something bad enough, you're going to learn it pretty quick. So,
yeah, I mean, you had, in my opinion, you had the most important knowledge, and that was the knowledge of the car.
mm-hmm.
You had the knowledge of how much cars are worth on the wholesale side, and you knew how to. Well, you knew if you were selling them wholesale, somebody was trying to sell them retail. So y'all's company had that nailed. Because I've seen y'all wholesaling cars forever. So y'all had that done.
I think on the F&I side, that was probably, to answer your question directly, that was probably the longest learning curve. Structuring a deal properly, getting a call back, understanding what you can do on the front, what you can do on the back, and what's more advantageous for the store, right? You don't always want to load everything up on the back because a lot of it's cancelable products, So how to manipulate trade-in allowances, and how to read approvals, how to bump approvals with banks, how to develop relationships and see what they can do or what they won't do. That stuff took years to learn, really. And once we got that down, our per copy went way up, and we're still developing our F&I, man. Still developing F&I. F&I feel like, especially right now where margins are at, we have to have the strongest F&I departments in the retail space for sure.
But where was your major growth from? Let's say you started that first month at 25 cars. What do you sell? Probably 150 cars a month now or so. I don't know. Was that a steady climb, or did you see one jump in those last 15 years that got you up to that number, or how did that look?
It's normally, as we grew our inventory, our numbers went up. I did see that as we grow our inventory, it required us to grow other things in our operation. But no, there wasn't necessarily one big jump. The more cars we had, the more cars we can sell. So we learned quickly that we had to grow our inventory. The problem with that is, and the problem most dealers are facing nowadays, is your current bank deals will allow you to get more money, but you shouldn't. And it took me a while to really understand that my cost of capital was too high to scale my business. So what I started doing was I started working in 3 different areas, but one of them was floor plan. Floor plan for dealers. Just because a floor plan company will give you $2 million, you should not use $2 million. Because it doesn't pencil. Everything's got to pencil out, and you have to make sure that if you're going to max out this line, and if you understand your rate of return per car and you understand your cost of capital, you got to put yourself in position for profitability. And that's what I realized. We were selling 190 cars a month out of our Fredericksburg store with about 200 in stock, and I was getting crushed. I was getting crushed in floor plan. And a lot of people say, man, that's a lot but understand, when you're on a bad floor plan deal, you pay per click, because not just is there an interest rate attached, but there's associated fees attached. I don't have those deals anymore, but every time you sell a car, you pay. Every time you floor a car, you pay. Every time you do a CLP, you pay. Every time you have a curtailment, you pay. So the fees were outrageous, and your actual interest rate may be 9 to 12%, but your APR with all associated fees, if you do the math on the money, is normally between 20 and 30%. And it's very, very difficult to sustain in that regard. So I realized that I can't do anything until I get cheaper money.
I think we got to restate that point. I think that's an interesting thing to look at when so many times you just focus on turn. And when you tell me you have a 12-time turn, that you're selling 190 cars with 200 in stock, I think you're doing great. That's perfect. That's great for your floor plan because you're getting those cars off. But you're telling me, wait a minute, dealer, you got to look at just because you're moving a lot of cars in and out, that's not necessarily good, because you're occupying that floor, you're utilizing the floor plan the best you can, but because of the frequency of the in and outs, you're getting hit with all those fees and everything else.
Yeah, and here's the skinny on that. I think we have a great car for a great price, and I believe I have that we have a better car than the next guy. Because of the work we do and the things we do to get the vehicle ready. My average shop bill is $1,750. We spend money on our stuff.
Yeah.
But to sell that many cars, you can't have $5,000 and $6,000 fronts. It's not happening. That's not happening. Doesn't matter how nice a car you have. So you heavily rely on your F&I department to produce when you're selling that many cars. And if you have a bad month in F&I or you got smoked on a couple of units on the front, and then you get pounded with floor plan fees, and selling 190 cars produces a little bit of salesperson compensation, right? It's tough, man. It's really tough. So you have to have your cost of capital super low to operate at that capacity.
Donald, you just said something that I wanted to revisit when it comes from the move from wholesaling to retailing. What was the learning curve like from Recon in the wholesale side to Recon in the retail side, and how'd y'all make that jump? Because there's a big difference.
Yeah. So with wholesale, we would make the cars auction proof, right? With retail, we would make them to where if we were selling them to our sister, that they were whole, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Not that we sell a bad car at auction. We had the same buyers every week. We took care of our buyers. We let them out of deals, whatever they wanted. They came back next week and bought 10 more from us. Yeah. The point I'm making is, if the power mirror didn't work, we didn't fix it.
Yeah.
We weren't going through these cars like a fun. So what happened was that it was really taking a while to get the cars ready, and not just were we spending more, but what we also had to learn was, hey, wait a minute, our floor plan company is not going to floor plan all this money, right? They don't floor plan the transport, they don't floor plan the shop bills, they don't floor plan the recon, they don't floor plan the advertising, they don't floor plan any of it. So I'm thinking $2,000 to $2,500 a car I need just in cash reserves to sustain with that car on the internet. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So as you increase, that's another thing. As you increase your floor plan, I got more money. Well, go ahead and add another 100 cars to your lot and see if 300-400 grand doesn't disappear out of your checking account.
Fast.
Really fast. Yeah. So we had to learn all that really, really quick. So
that's interesting. I knew there would be a big jump, and honestly, we had the same jump as well. You would go to a point where, oh well, it's just it's just going to the auction. but it's the same as retail. It's really not. It's not even close.
It's not even close. Yeah.
And so y'all had a wholesale recon facility there. Now it sounds like you have a old fashioned Henry Ford assembly line.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
How did you get from there to now with recon?
Are you speaking just specifically with car detailing or the whole recon process?
Just the whole recon process in general.
Well, to be honest, the way we built the dealership, bought the land, built it, so it was a pretty big facility. And the way it was structured, it was really conducive to both models, to be honest with you. The mechanic shop and the car detailing and the body shop, I mean, it didn't really change how we did things. I mean, now the cars still go in the repair facility first. They get, fixed, state inspection, PDI'd, everything done, oil changed, and then they just go right on into the assembly line for detailing. And the detail line we haven't lost any of our customers. I mean, we obviously don't have 45 cars a day to detail, right? I'm not selling that many. So we have a lot of wholesale clients that send us a lot of cars, not just wholesale, but retail too. Not everybody has the ability to detail their cars or recon their cars the way we're doing them. So I would say there was no interruption in that regard relative to the way our business was structured operationally. We just kind of changed a few things about what we did to the cars, but everything was pretty much in place. Now, we did at that point see the need for customer pay service. You see, before we never opened the door to customer pay, but if you're having a successful retail operation, I'm going to say at one point you're going to have to open customer pay service, because you're going to keep sending your customers down the road for comebacks. You're going to keep sending them. Plus, we're selling cars out of service. We want to see these people. They buy a car once every 3-4 years. They're coming into our service facility 6-7 times a year. So they come in, hey, how you doing? How's Bobby Joe? How's Billy Jane? All of them, and then they say, oh, I saw this car. That happens all day long. And to be able to develop relationships and rapport with the local customer base is huge. So, that was a big learning curve. Customer pay service, that took us a long time to learn. But, what we have now set up is, we're huge on technology. We have no paper in our dealerships, even in F&I service, nothing. So, cars come into service, they get scanned in. Those vehicles are digitally dispatched to all the technicians. All the techs have laptops on their toolboxes. They enter all their notes. They take all their pictures from what's wrong with the vehicle. The service writers are able to, show this stuff to the customers, email them, text them, get them approvals. All of our shop stream management is digitally dispatched and looked at. Parts department is also communicating with the software. So that took a while to develop, and we did not need that in wholesale. But yeah, it just definitely took a long time to develop that part.
Service departments are so key to retail facilities, in my opinion, to buy here, pay here facilities as well, because every time you send that customer somewhere else, that you run the chance of losing that customer, and it's really hard to get that through your head when all you're worrying about is selling the next car. But until you can get to the level to learn that and to figure it out, you're losing money. And that's, you're spot on there.
You called your recon line an assembly line. Now, I gotta ask the question. I don't want to go down that road too far, but are you literally rolling these cars through like an assembly line type recon situation where like one guy is just doing glass, one guy is just shining tires, one guy is just shampooing?
Yes. Yeah. And it's not one guy. We have 2 to 4 people per stage. There's about 10 stages, right?
Yeah.
But for instance, when they get to the buffing stage, right? And they're rolling down an assembly line. It's not like, the car stays in one spot and then, people are jumping to the car.
You have a track? You have like a car wash type track that these things sit on? And
it's a 200-foot shop. And they start from one end and they go all the way down to the end.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah,
That's
people,
crazy.
yeah, and I have a video to actually, if you guys want to see it, I can
Yeah.
send it to you. But each stage is its own thing. Like when they get to the buffing station, I
Mhm.
have two buffers, one on each side of the car. And they buff the whole car once with a compound, and then they buff it again with like a glaze. And they're buffing a half a car both times, right? Because they're one guy's on the driver's side, the other's
Yeah.
on the passenger. When he's done, the car rolls up, and then it goes to the interior part cleaning station. Everything that's a hard part, including leather, gets scrubbed, right? If it has cloth seats, they don't get scrubbed till the next station. But yeah, that's the stages in which they go down. And the last thing we do is we paint the fender wells. So it's a pretty cool process. And the only
Wow.
way we could do it that way is the assembly line method, so
Because you don't want to train 21 people how to do everything
you
and
can't.
have 21 pieces of equipment for every single, if you had 10 different detail bays with two guys in each bay, that'd be a nightmare of parts and training. But you're
This
saying you specialize these guys and they are doing 10 or 40 buffs every single day.
Mhm.
They get really good at it.
They're very good at it. And efficiency is a huge word there, but also, um, it's a safer environment. There's less movement. You know what I mean? The cars are less likely to bump into each other because we don't have cars pulling in, pulling out, pulling in, pulling out.
Hmm.
It's just very easy. I pay people full time. I have two people. Their full time job is to take cars into the assembly line, and when they come out, park them where they go. That's what they do all day. Full time job. So yeah, it's a pretty cool operation. But back before we built that in this building back in 2000, in the early 90s, we did it the old way, and we only got about 60 details done a week. And we had a crew of about 10 people, and two of them worked on a car at a time. And if they could get two cars done a day, it was great. But that's kind of the old way we did things. When we built this, we realized we could speed this thing up, man. Let's kind of mechanize our people. So,
what did you base that on? Was it something that you came up with, or did you see? I think this is sort of how CarMax does it. I'm not sure. How did you figure this out?
so we did that before CarMax was big. That we were doing this stuff in the 90s. I can't take credit for the detailing. My father is the one that engineered it. And that was his vision with the wholesale remarketing thing when we built the shop. To be honest, I thought the detailing was going to go away when we started retail, but the need for it never stopped. So we kept that segment of our business because it was the most profitable thing we did in our service department. Way more than repair, way more than body shop, trucking, anything. And we, because of our reputation in the area, certain dealers will bring us 40, some of them 60 cars a week,
Wow.
and that helps, keep that machine going for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like economies of scale are crucial to have that kind of an operation to be able to specialize. Yeah. You've got to be doing that 40, 50 cars a week type thing to have a big enough operation where you can specialize everyone. So, Donald, I want to talk to you, getting into the retail side of it, right? So your sales team, what kind of a situation do you have there? I mean, when did you start kind of growing your sales team? Because I imagine doing that kind of volume, you've got to have a pretty healthy looking sales floor.
Well, I'm very fortunate. My two brothers also work with me. So, and a lot of times when you work with family, and you bring family in, it's a situation where you have to, or it's an uncomfortable situation. But my two brothers are very, very high performers, and we're very close to each other. We work every day together, but we also go to the same church. We sit together in church, and then we hang out after. We're together, 8 days a week.
Hmm.
And that's super important in my opinion, just for the cohesiveness of our operation. But they have been with me pretty much since the beginning, maybe a little bit after. But they're superstars, man. And I never really had to go find really, really good talent in that regard, to help with sales. But we have developed people under them, and that hasn't been a huge, very difficult task. I think training's important and management's important, but our sales team isn't huge either. I mean, we don't have 20 salespeople. I don't hold that many. So,
Well, Donald, we talked about before we got on the air here, we kind of talked about what's going on in the retail environment right now. I know we all have our own ideas of where this is going, but you're fighting it every day with banks pulling out, with money costing more. What is the state of our economy in the car business right now, and where do you think it's going?
This is a hot topic in my opinion. When the Feds started to raise interest rates, a couple things started to happen, but in my opinion, this is the worst year that we have had in the car business, and could get worse next year if certain things don't change. But what happens is, when the Fed raised rates, a lot of folks, their cost of capital tripled. Okay, just dealers alone. Okay, which certainly produced a harder situation for us to remain profitable. What happened also is consumers' rates went up. Right, we're getting callback. You guys control your own rates, I'm assuming, but we get callbacks from banks, and we're selling 850 beacons, 8 and 9% interest rates. That's very difficult for them to swallow when they're signing up for 199 just a year and a half ago. And so because of that, when interest rates go up, their payment threshold really hasn't changed because nobody's getting raises right now, right? So what's that do to the value of our inventory? It crushes it, right? We have huge margin suppression. And so we're seeing margins go down. We're seeing folks' interest rates go up. Our cost of capital is going up. They're less likely to buy stuff on the back because they're trying to keep these payments manageable. They're absolutely crushed in their trades because they bought stuff in COVID, right? So we're over allowing on trades, trying to make car deals. And we're also seeing that customers that we're seeing bad credit. We're seeing the condition of the credit in America start to decline. Okay. And a lot of times, this isn't a good thing, but we're also seeing on the other side, banks are starting to get tighter, right? So we're getting dirtier paper, and then the banks are getting tighter and tighter. Like if I get a 700 beacon on a credit app, I don't get excited anymore. I don't. I got to get an approval first, I used to get a 620, 610, and this is done, it's not that way right now. And we're saying, like you said, banks are starting to pull out. So what this is causing us to do is, if we are going to make it through it, we have to pretty much sell cars for a lot lower margin, and hope to make it up on the back, hope to make it up with volume. And that's the gear that we're shifting into, just because, my overhead's huge. It's not going anywhere, and I can't fire all my employees because I'm just not making good money on the cars. This ecosystem, every part needs every part, and so I'm not pessimistic, but it's probably the hardest time in the economy that I've seen in a very long time. And if Feds raise rates again, it could be detrimental. I mean, even a half a point, it could be detrimental to the state of our economy. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, for sure.
What do you think the UAW strike? How's that going to affect us right now?
It's a good question. I think it's gonna not. I don't think it's gonna surge the used car market like most people think, and this is why. Back in COVID, people had a lot of cash in their hands. They had a lot of buying power, and we experienced vehicle shortages then, right? We experienced plenty of them, but it was the hottest time and the largest margins we've ever seen, right? But this is not the same thing. This isn't the same thing. And if new cars, which haven't recovered yet, new car supply hasn't recovered, but if new cars get pinched again, Yes, I think indirectly it'll put demand on used, but I think people back then were a lot they were operating really outside of what they needed, and they bought a lot of wants, and right now people are making financial decisions that are a little bit tighter, and it may serve. Only thing I think is going to happen is our prices are going to go up at the auction, but the customers still aren't going to want to pay them, and I don't want to see that strike happen, for a lot of reasons, but I don't think it's gonna personally, I don't think it's gonna be what everybody thinks in terms of, oh yeah, it's gonna be another. No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think it's gonna be bad for everybody, for sure.
Yeah, it would just be like from a parts and the outside standpoint, when these part plants go on strike, and if that's prolonged, now it really starts hurting us, right? We're not getting used stuff, or things aren't getting distributed. What I find interesting, Donald, when you said about trying to make it up on the back end from a retail standpoint, and you're saying you've got these 800 credit scores that are getting a call back at 9%, and you happen to get the deal done, and maybe you get a couple points back from the bank, but that guy with the 800 credit score is paying that thing off the second he can get it paid off, right? I mean, he may have financed it for a minute just to get the deal done. I worry about the chargebacks, for retail guys that are maybe making it up on the back end and then losing that loan shortly thereafter and getting charged back by the bank. That would be surprising to me. It seems like you guys have got this perfect storm situation going on.
Yeah, chargebacks can be difficult. Also, cancellation of products, right? Those are much larger in terms of how it hits you. But yeah, I mean, we get better rates than 9%. Depending on the term, I mean, we can still get it in the fives.
Have you lost any major lenders in your tool belt? Have any of them just called you and said, "Hey, we're done"?
One. It was our first prime lender we ever had, and to be honest, we sent them one deal a year.
Oh, okay.
They were that bank that wanted nobody less than an 800 and amount financed over 60 grand, and it just made sense. But we did a lot of deals with them back days ago, but they got completely out of indirect lending. It wasn't us. It was just they were kind of done with it. And when you see banks, getting out of floor planning and indirect lending, that's another indication things aren't great. So,
in your region or in your area, who are you seeing are the most friendly lenders right now that other dealers could maybe go talk to or knock on the door if they're trying to expand their lender options?
none of them are friendly. They're banks.
Who will return an email right now?
Yeah. We have good relationships with our banks. But I saw a T-shirt the other day. It said, and I want to find it and buy it. It says, "Banks don't like you," and I really really like that, because I feel like sometimes, and I'm just going to speak openly, banks will look after their own interests first, and I've seen so many colleagues get cut off of their dealer agreements when they didn't deserve to, or floor plans when they didn't deserve to, with no notice. And, but where we're finding our best rates right now is credit unions. They are behind with the rate hikes. They normally take a minute to catch up, and to compete with a lot of the other credit unions out there that some people, we have a lot of military at the two dealerships we have. So Navy Fed, USAA, and all those other military style lenders. We're having to send a lot of deals to credit unions to compete with them. And they're giving us good term, good LTV, and that's really where a lot of our paper is going right now. I like better, I don't want to say bank names on here because, but I like better like your conventional dealer agreement banks and not the credit unions. You call your rep, you structure the deal. There's a lot of opportunity in the loan for the dealer, but I feel like, man, with the FTC and the way they're pushing things and how everything got restructured relative to how we get paid, all that has changed a lot, man. And it's a lot of by the book callbacks and, category lending and, but, we can still make money. It's just how we do it's differently. So there's less communication with banks than there was 10 years ago. We call the rep every time we got a callback. We said every time we got a callback, we call the rep, rehash. That stuff's over with, man. The callback you get is what you get. You might be able to, call them and, rehash sometimes if they miss something and they did, but more than likely, it is what it is and you just move on. So
yeah, it's funny when you say, the banks don't like you. And I know we saw this back in the COVID days and even further in the 08, 09 days, but flooring lines, banks that floor, those are the ones that they're your best friend when you're taking those cars and you're paying your fees and your curtailments. And the second they get scared, you wake up the next morning and your line is cut back and they're at your dealership doing audits every other day. And that's your lifeblood for a lot of dealers, right? I mean, they lose their flooring line, they're just straight up out of business. You lose a lender or two, you're going to make things work, right? You're going to get scrappy, you're going to do cash deals, but when you lose that flooring line or if it gets cut that back substantially, that's your lifeblood.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not right, in my opinion, because you extend credit to somebody, they build an operation around it, they hire people, they build infrastructure, they need the cars to operate, and then they get it ripped out from under them. That's a hard pill to swallow. And, a lot of these floor plans don't allow you to have other floor plans because of the UCC filings and the way they want them arranged. And so you can't really go out and get a second choice. So when they decide to rip the rug from underneath of you, it's very difficult just on a whim, especially if you're having a bad year, to go replace that kind of capital. So
yeah,
it's difficult, man, for sure.
Donald, to kind of wrap things up, what's the best decision you've made in your business?
It's two parts. I'll say both. One is joining my local dealer association. BIADA to me is it's priceless. I think the membership's $450 a year. I'd pay $4,500 a year. I have met more relationships, more vendors, more banks, more customers, more opportunity and I've learned a lot through my association. And I think a dealer that's not a part of their dealer association is, they're missing the boat. I don't want to call names, but you don't care about what you're doing if you're not a part of your dealer association.
I agree with that.
But through that, the best thing I've ever done for my business is focus on banks, and I split this up in three ways: floor planning, dealer agreements, and real estate. Better your bank deals. Floor planning, you have to get better floor plan deals. You got to work on it every 6 months, every year. You got to get a better deal. If you're not getting a call from your floor plan company, wanting to make your deal worse, that means they don't want you to call them because they know you can get a better deal. If you're not getting pressure from them, you're doing pretty good. You've got to press on them every 2-3 months, man, and just make them miserable. I'm gonna shop you. I'm gonna keep looking. I need an extent. Better your terms. Decrease your cost of capital, and eventually get away from your conventional floor plan companies and get a real one. Where there's no fees, there's no curtailments. You just pay on the money utilization once per month, and it really puts you in a position to scale. The second bank deals that I would tell you is always, if you're a retail dealer, you guys are by your payer, but if you're a retail dealer, you have to keep getting more dealer agreements. Even we have 50 some banks in our store, probably more than that. We don't use them all. We can't, but I'm always looking for more banks for indirect lending because they always change their programs. Some of them go out like we just talked about, and you never want to be held not being able to, provide a solution for your customer. The third bank deal is real estate. I'm going to encourage everybody that's in the car business to own the property they're operating in. If any way we don't make $1 doing this, we own the dirt and we're building our reinsurance companies, right? So, why work somewhere 10, 20, 30 years and then have to give it back to somebody else? Always continue to develop. If you don't own your place, buy it. If you can't buy it, move, and continue to develop with the actual real estate deal that you're doing. When I first started this, I had a horrible real estate deal. Now, they're very, very good. They're very good. They have very long terms and very low rates. And it's really set us up for, to just have something. Like I said, if this whole thing hits the fan, we lose everything. This place is worth a lot of money, and so is the other dealership we have, and we own them. So those are the three banks, man. Just constantly focusing on banks. So even if you're in the buy here, pay here space, you can still pay attention to two of those.
Yep. Cool. Jeff, you got anything else?
Donald, thank you so much for your time, man. We really appreciate it. This has been a lot to take in. Hope everyone enjoyed.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it.
Dealers helping dealers. Please leave us a review and subscribe. The Independent Dealer Podcast.